Hey everyone, it's Mojaxx, back in the DJcity UK lab. Not too long ago, there was a thing called Engine Prime. That was the operating system and software designed to work with the Denon DJ Prime series hardware. Then a while back, they changed the name of that to Engine OS. And that led some people to speculate that perhaps this operating system would be coming to some other hardware that wasn't Denon DJ. Those people were right. This is my review of the Numark Mixstream Pro. Let's get to it. To quickly get you up to speed if you aren't aware, InMusic is the parent company of a number of different brands, including Denon DJ, Numark, Rain DJ and Akai. They generally like to keep their brands quite separate, but sometimes things do cross over. For example, on many InMusic products, you'll find pads that are based on the classic Akai MPC pads. So it was always quite likely that, having spent all the time and money they have on creating the Engine Prime OS for Denon DJ, that operating system and software would eventually surface on products from other brands in the InMusic family, hence the renaming of it to Engine OS a while back. As for Numark, in recent times that brand has mostly become synonymous with affordable budget gear. Things like the Mixtrack series of controllers and the Scratch Mixer have been incredibly popular, as other InMusic brands like Denon DJ and Rain DJ have been targeted more at high-end pro users. Fittingly then, the Mixstream Pro takes the standalone Engine OS system and brings it to a whole new price point. To be clear, this is not a controller, although there's no reason it couldn't be with the right software support. It is instead a fully standalone system aimed at beginner or intermediate DJs. Until now, the lowest priced all-in-one with Engine OS was the Denon DJ Prime Go, a product I really like, but one that is well beyond the budget of many DJs at around $1,000. The Mixstream Pro comes in with a street price of $600 in the US, so that's a very significant saving. We'll talk about the engine side of things first. Put simply, as I know some viewers of this video will be new to DJing, Engine OS takes all the jobs that a laptop would often do in a DJ setup and transfers them to a built-in processor and operating system within the hardware, controlled by a combination of knobs, buttons and a high-quality multi-touch screen, a 7-inch one in this case. The Mixstream Pro ships with the new Engine OS 2.0, which I did a video about recently, and includes all of the features of that operating system, like onboard track analysis, built-in Wi-Fi for access to streaming services like BeatSource Link, as well as Dropbox for cloud storage of your own tracks. You can search with a QWERTY keyboard on screen, it has track preview so you can listen to a track in the headphones without loading it, onboard recording for local music, wireless Ableton Link for synchronizing with other Link-enabled kit, and much more. So whilst a computer can be a useful accompaniment to the Mixstream Pro for organising music you already own with the Engine DJ software and then transferring that over to media devices for playback on the hardware, it is by no means essential. You can even update the operating system over Wi-Fi now. So, as the Mixstream name implies, if you have a subscription to one of the supported streaming services, you never need to use a regular computer with it at all. You should definitely throw a USB stick or SD card in there to save the metadata from your streaming tracks for future use. Things like waveforms, beat grids, cue points and saved loops are all saved on there for the next time you play the same track. But if you're starting out learning the ropes as a DJ, streaming could absolutely be all you need. It even works with engine lighting, which is effectively onboard sound switch, and that supports Philips Hue wirelessly, so if you want to get some synchronized lighting going with your smart lights at home, you can do that at no extra cost and again without a computer. If you want to get involved with DMX lighting too, that option is open to you, but you'll need the actual sound switch software to get that set up. Numark aren't talking about the specs of the onboard processor compared to other Engine OS devices, but I've used the whole Denon DJ Prime series a lot, and when it comes to performance, I really didn't notice any difference between the Mixstream Pro and the higher end devices. Tracks are fast to load and analyze, and overall the OS feels just as snappy as it usually does. So if the engine side of things is up there with the Pro devices, where has the $400 or more price saving come from? Well, that's where we get into the hardware. Back in 2020, I reviewed the latest iterations of Numark's Mixtrack series of controllers, the Pro FX and Platinum FX. I was really impressed by them considering their price, and when it comes to build, design and many performance features, the Mixstream Pro is definitely on a par with those. The build is all plastic but still seems fairly durable. It will certainly survive kicking around in a teenager's bedroom just fine. All of the pots on the unit are metal, which gives them a real sturdy feel. The touch-sensitive jog wheels are again plastic but do have a nice enough feel to them, and the resistance is about right. They're free-spinning enough to do some scratching and a good spin back, but not so loose that pitch bending is a problem, especially as you can reduce the sensitivity of that in the settings. Each deck section features clicky buttons for play, pause, cue and sync, as well as a shift control to activate various secondary functions. There's a button to choose the kind of scratch mode each jog wheel has. In normal mode, the scratching is normal, as it says, but the smart mode enables what is basically slip scratching. So when you let go after scratching, the track continues to play from where it would have been if you didn't scratch. It's a fun feature, nothing I'd really use that often, but some will find it useful, I'm sure. Then we get to the pads, and those, although quite small, are proper pads, not clicky. Responsiveness is decent, and you have 4 modes to choose from: hot cues, saved loops, auto loop, and roll. Even better, by double tapping the mode buttons, you get a second page for each mode, so another 4 cues and saved loops, and different beat values for auto loops and rolls. Only having auto loops on the pads rather than on an encoder like on the Prime Series kit can be a bit less intuitive at times, but between those and the saved loops, which you can set to any length on the fly, there is plenty of loop control here. To the right of each deck is a pair of pitch bend buttons, which I've really grown to love on Engine devices, and the pitch slider itself. That is rather short, which normally I'm no fan of, but with the plus or minus 4% pitch range offered in Engine OS, it is accurate enough to pull off long blends without too much fuss. At the top you have high and low pass combo filters with large oversized knobs. These are fun to work with, especially as you can adjust the resonance to your own taste in the settings. Moving on to the mixer section, you have 3-band EQ on each channel, as well as a gain control for presetting your levels. One thing I do really like is the VU meters. They are fairly short and don't have a ton of segments, but they are switchable in settings between showing the master output and each channel individually. A very useful tool. The up faders are nothing to write home about with a preset smooth fade, but they do the job fine. And then we have the crossfader, which is much the same story. It's got a pretty sharp cut-in, again adjustable in settings, but the actual cut-in distance is a touch long for my taste. You can pull off basic scratches easily enough, but keen turntablists will, I suspect, be left wanting a bit more. Above the faders are the controls for the built-in effects, and these are kind of half awesome and half a bit disappointing. On the awesome side of things, the paddles to activate them are great, locking in one direction and springing back in the other. The effects themselves sound good too, and the selection is on point with echo, flanger, phaser and delay, plus they're post-fader, so you can close the crossfader or up fader and you get an echo out tail. Where they're disappointing is that you have 0 adjustment options. It's on or off and that's it. So there is no control over the amount of effect applied or the beat values. And whilst I do like a half beat echo, it's not what I'd choose to use all the time. As some other Engine devices do have effects controls built into the OS itself, I do wonder if that would be possible to add into the Mixstream Pro later on. I hope it is. Beyond all that, there are numerous dedicated controls for the OS itself, track loading, browsing, etc., as well as easy access to different music sources and the control center for changing your settings. All of these work great. One of the things I really like about Engine OS is that you can easily find your own way of interacting with it. Some jobs you'll do with the touchscreen and others with the hardware controls. So it was important that the Mixstream Pro gave you enough of those, and it certainly isn't lacking there. The headphone cue system is great. You have both sizes of headphone socket, a volume control and a cue master blend knob. Channels are chosen with a dedicated button for each deck, and you can enable split cue in the settings. Next to the headphone jacks on the front panel is a mic input, which is pretty basic with just a 1/4-inch jack socket and volume knob, but that will be sufficient for house parties and the like. Around the back we see the power supply on an external power brick, a USB-B port for connecting to a computer, not much use for that at this time, and then 2 USB ports and an SD card slot which you can play local tracks from. This is pretty cool as it means you can easily play back-to-back sets with your friends or just use multiple drives of your own. And with that we get to the outputs, and the one big feature on the Mixstream Pro which I haven't even mentioned yet. It has built-in speakers. In terms of output connections, you have a pair of unbalanced RCAs and balanced XLRs, both controlled by the same master volume knob. This is good as you can easily connect the Mixstream Pro to a proper Pro sound system through those balanced connections if needed. That is sometimes overlooked on a lot of budget gear. Sound quality through that master output is clean and clear. Ultimately we're dealing with fairly budget digital to analog conversion in a device like this, but it sounds plenty good enough for the intended use cases. And then you have a second volume knob for the speakers, which are located at the front of the unit. These contain 2 drivers on each side, one facing forwards and the other angled more upwards. And overall those speakers are surprisingly good. The drivers are rather tiny, of course, so room-shaking bass just isn't going to happen, but the clarity is pretty good, and they do go quite loud. Let me demonstrate. Now, of course, it's pretty much impossible to demonstrate the sound quality of some speakers to you through, either a boom mic or the on-camera microphone that I'm using here, But what I can do is give you an idea of the volume of the speakers on the Mixstream Pro. So I'm going to gradually just turn it up. This is my normal voice that I use to make these videos and speak to you on camera. So let's just go from there. So that's a quarter turn up. That's halfway up. That's 3/4 of the way up. And at that point I'm having to shout to be heard. And that's max. That's the maximum volume. Might be distorting the inputs at this point, but we'll see. But you see the sound itself is not really breaking up. So as you can hear, they do go to a respectable level, certainly good enough for practicing at home, and crucially, they don't seem to distort even when cranked fully up. I was a little concerned about the placement of the speakers. Would my hands block the drivers when mixing? But whilst there is a little of that, it's nothing like as bad as I feared. I'll note that you can choose whether or not the mic signal will be sent to the speakers, so avoiding any potential feedback issues with that. The speakers, being so small, definitely aren't a replacement for a good set of studio monitors, and certainly not PA speakers, but don't forget that you still have that main output with a separate volume control. So spinning some tunes at a family barbecue, hooked up to some bigger speakers and using the inbuilt ones as your DJ monitors, that kind of thing is perfectly feasible. And that's really the icing on the cake for what is truly an all-in-one device. If you really break it down, what you're paying for is hardware of mixed track level quality, and those controllers sell for between $200 and $300. And then you're getting all the hugely powerful Engine OS stuff with that touchscreen for standalone use for an extra $300 to $400 on top. Is there a good value proposition in that? I think so, absolutely. In many respects, this really is the ideal beginner DJ device. It is super low maintenance, simple to use, and has enough advanced features under the hood that even once you've learned the basics, boredom will still be a very long way off indeed. So there you go, my take on the Mixstream Pro from Numark. What an impressive piece of hardware this is. Absolutely. $600 in the US for a true all-in-one DJ solution. You've even got speakers in there. So you get your Mixstream Pro, a pair of headphones, and either a streaming music subscription or some local music, and you are off and running. You could use this for years without ever needing to connect it to a computer. That is quite something. The operating system itself, Engine OS 2.0, of course, that is really advanced, it's really professional, but you must adjust your expectations around the hardware because this is not a Denon DJ Prime 2, for example. You know, it doesn't have that same level of pro hardware that you're getting there, but of course you're paying substantially less. What you're getting in terms of hardware is much closer to one of Numark's existing beginner or intermediate DJ controllers. It does the job, it's just not quite the same as, obviously, you know, a high-end all-in-one solution from Denon DJ, for example. But yeah, once you've got your expectations in check, once you know what you're looking at here, this thing is absolutely staggering for the money. It really, really is. It works extremely well, offers all the features that you're going to need, and I think this is really going to shake up the kind of beginner intermediate DJ market. It can't fail to, because we've never really seen anything quite like this before. Thanks for watching today. Make sure you're subscribed and hit that bell icon down below to get notified anytime there's a new video from myself or the rest of the DJcity team. I'll see you soon.